classroom. I mean, we can absolutely use something like that, but incorporate it with reading. I think that that's a way to get them interested and get them involved, something more hands-on. But, I mean...
There are so many manuals today, technical manuals for all the, even consumer items we have. You know, buy an HD TV and, you know, with all the things it can do and the remote that you have with it and, you know, trying to set it all up.
Oh, my gosh.
You know, you better be able to read that technical manual to be able to do it. Or you might, you know, there is so much today. It's so important today for people to be able to read, particularly to read technical writing.
Yep, absolutely. So, okay, what do you think the difference is between reading to read and reading to learn?
Well, reading to read to me is reading for your own enjoyment, for your own pleasure. You know, reading to learn is a little bit different. Sometimes when you're reading to learn, you're not going to be able to choose what you read, and you know so. That makes makes sometimes the task of the teacher more difficult because sometimes the student has to read something that they wouldn't normally read on their own, and so reading to learn sometimes takes an extra effort on the person who's reading because maybe something they don't particularly wouldn't choose to read, but that they have to read in order to be successful in whatever course they're taking or whatever job they've started. They have to learn, the job, and you maybe go through a training, a period of training and so forth, and maybe they don't want to read some of the things that are there, but they need to learn how to do the job.
Absolutely.
So I think that's a big difference, that the desire to do it has to be because you want to learn to do your job or to make a good grade in that class or whatever. When you read to read, it's for your own enjoyment, your own enrichment, that sort of thing. So.
And so, do you think that one is more important than the other, or do they go hand in hand?
No, I think they go hand in hand. Because, again, the more comfortable you are with actually just reading, the more skillful you're going to be, and the more open you're going to be to read. Even, I think if you're good at reading to read, if you read to read, it'll be much easier for you to read to learn.
Absolutely. So do you think it's important for a student to have a choice when it comes to choosing the novel to read as a class, or should it just be up to the teacher?
I don't have any problem with the choice, but I think the choice should be approved by the teacher.
Yeah.
I would not say, unless a particular course called for everybody to read a particular book, then I would say then they just have to. That's just the way it is. That's real life. You were saying real life?
Right.
Sometimes I think we forget about real life when trying to entertain people. And I think that's a mistake.
Okay.
So I'm kind of old-fashioned that way. But I would say there are assignments. I know I gave assignments as a history teacher on particular topics. And, the students chose, their sources and chose what they wanted to read, but with my approval.
Right.
I wouldn't just take all control away from the teacher. I don't think that's...
No. See, like in my classroom, we chose together, and we talked about what we liked in books and what we didn't like in books. And we had just finished reading Beastly. It was like a modern version of Beauty and the Beast. But the school had to read it in 8th grade. You had to. And they rejected it. They challenged me on it all the time because they hated it so much. And... so then we chose together, and I said, okay, well, what do we like? What do we dislike? And we voted, and then essentially it came down to we chose Hunger Games together. And we read that, and I mean, I've never seen them so interested, and so they were begging to read that day, and I was really excited.
I think that's good, and that's a good incentive. But I do believe somewhere along the line, kids need to learn that they don't get to choose everything they want.
Yep.
Part of what we do in education is, teach kids about how to get along in the real world. And in the real world, they can't always do that.
Yeah.
And in school, if they always get to choose everything that they do, they're not really being prepared for the real world.
Absolutely.
And I think a lot of employers today see that.
Well, it's so different. We were talking about how education has changed and everything. But if you are a reading teacher and you're trying to encourage your students to read something that interests them, and a student claims that they hate reading,
Mm-hmm.
what would you do?
Well, I think that I hated math. But
Oh, thanks. I didn't want to be rude. I
Hey,
was on the phone with my
you're on TV.
Hey, you're on.
Oh, excuse me.
You're fine.
No, you can be interviewed though.
No.
But no, I was not particularly fond of math, but it was something that I knew that I needed and was good for me to have. Even though I'm married to a math teacher, as you've heard. But I guess the thing you'd have to do is try to find a topic that they're interested in, something in life they're interested in.
Right.
Whether is it baseball, is it wrestling, is it fishing, is it whatever, and try to get them to express an interest in something, and then have them read something about that particular thing they're interested in. I'm not a reading teacher. I never was a reading teacher. But to me, that would be the logical thing to do. Find an interest that they have, something they really like. And could be skateboarding, and get them to encourage them to start reading in that area.
I think that there are so many different books out there now. I mean, I had a kid that he told me, well, I hate reading. It's stupid, and I'm never going to have to use that when because I'm going to be a rapper, and okay, or I'm going to be a famous sports star. I said, okay, well, what sport do you like? And then I found a book on, a kid that was a track star, but then he was transporting drugs, and the kid was so into this book, and then he told me, reading isn't that bad, but...
Well, the other part of that is, sometimes, depending on the age of the kids, of course, every little boy thinks he's going to be a Major League Baseball player, but sometimes they, when they get a little older, like your middle school age kids and high school age kids, somebody's got to tell them the truth. And the truth is, maybe 1% of the boys in the United States become professional baseball players.
Right.
And the ones that become rappers, the ones that really become famous and make a living at it, is probably less than 1% of those that want to be rappers.
But I mean,
and they better learn how to read. Somewhere along the line, that has to be, laid out there. So, I guess that, but like I said, I'd probably try to get them interested in reading, in something, to read something that a topic they're interested in, and hope for the best, and know that you can only solve some of the people's problems some of the time.
Yeah.
That's realism too, but you try your hardest, to get them, because that without it, they're not going to be very successful.
No. Okay, and the last question, what kind of changes would you like to see in schools to improve reading programs?
Well, I've been out of the schools for 10 years now. I think the problem is one of the things that, particularly I worked in secondary schools. I worked in middle schools and high schools, mostly high school, and I felt reading was kind of put on the back burner. In high school, they think that people should learn how to read by then.
Yep.
And which is true.
Absolutely.
They should know how to read by the time they get to high. They should know by the time, while they're in elementary school, how to read properly, so forth. But it's kind of the forgotten sister when you get to secondary schools. And like I said, I believe in developmental reading. And I think that in secondary schools, reading should be required not only in middle school, but I'm not saying 4 years in high school, but there should be some requirement for reading in high school. It shouldn't be just for the kids who are, just a shade above, just being literate in reading. It should be more widespread. Unfortunately, with the way schools are funded these days, there just doesn't, when you get past the other disciplines that are required, reading seems to take a back, it's in the background in secondary schools and shouldn't be.
Well, do you think that due to the lack of funding, that's why it's kind of pushed to the back? Because
yes,
it is one of the most important things.
Well, like I said, it's the key to learning.
So why would it be pushed back?
Because, like I said, I think there's an expectation that the only kids that need to be
are
helped
remedial.
in their reading skills are the
remedial
ones
readers.
because of the money.
Yep.
You know, now there is remedial instruction in
Mm-hmm.
secondary schools for kids who have the really low reading scores, and there
Mm-hmm.
should be.
Yep.
You know, trying to get them up to level. But I believe in a more developmental approach, and of course, reading across the content area is an answer to that doesn't cost a lot.
Right.
You know, you don't have to hire a big reading department to teach
No.
reading, but you have to train the teachers
Mm-hmm.
in the different disciplines on how to teach reading in their classes. So that would be the big thing, I would say. In today's schools, the way I see it, I think every teacher who comes out of a university
Mm-hmm.
with a degree in education, and even those that have come out of universities and are in the teaching field, they should have a lot of training.
Mm-hmm.
If they didn't get it at the university level, they should have a lot of training in teaching, have reading be part of their teaching process in their particular disciplines.
Absolutely. Okay. Well, thank you very much for
Well, you're
participating
welcome.
in the interview.
You're welcome.